Fellow dissidents, everybody knows that in America and around the world abroad that censorship is running rampant. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because Senator Rand Paul had an astounding speech the other day. And every time I've tried to say these things, I have been censored myself for multiple reasons. What I'm told, why it's being censored, it's always extremely vague, and the appeal almost always fails. So what I would like to do is I would like to watch this video of Senator Rand Paul and just comment as we go along as a safeguard to the censorship. Because everything that this man has said, I think everybody in America needs to hear, and everybody that's trying to say it is being censored themselves. So it's very important that as many avenues as possible this gets heard. Yes, I find this very important. It is the most un-American thing ever to be censoring political opposition. This is a very slippery slope. There's many areas in our country that are politically polarized. And now in the medical realm, it is extremely polarized with very, very, very rapidly different worldviews. And if the dissenting opinion is spoken out loud, they are lashed at. This is not something to be taken lightly. So I would like to go over this video and as a safeguard to my opinion as a small voice that gets muted as soon as I speak up. I would like to go along with Senator Rand Paul and confirm and give my opinion and espouse my beliefs about it. Okay, so let's give it a go.
We are a huge success, but we're a country misguided and led astray by media that aren't honest. So, for example, if you watched CNN, you would think that nobody's getting vaccinated, and it's a complete disaster, and whoa, we're stuck in this rut because no one's vaccinated. It's completely untrue. Over 90% of people over 65 who are the most vulnerable are vaccinated. Now, sure, there are a lot of younger people who aren't vaccinated, and there's some older people, but 90% is a pretty good success. Over age 50, it's like 75, 80% of people. People are informed. They know this is a disease that can affect any age, but affects primarily the older ages.
Okay, so first, I want to start with that. Now, obviously, I can't reach the people who are completely entitled to their opinion, for one, and also who are completely committed to their ideology and their decisions. Now, having said that, what he just said is absolutely true. Most people are informed, and they act accordingly. But if you were to only watch the mainstream press, it seems like a dire situation, and it's the only way to help it is to cull your neighbor. It's absolutely astounding, the polarization in this country. Most people are on the same page, except for a few fringe elements, and those are the ones with the loudest voices.
For example, the one truth you won't be told is an 85-year-old has a 10,000 times greater chance of dying than the 10-year-old. Now, you think we should treat them the same? If you were their doctor, do you think a 10-year-old should get the same health care and the same prescriptions for what they need to do as an 85-year-old? Makes no sense at all.
That's absurd.
I see 10-year-olds and I see 5-year-olds out on the mall. My wife and I are walking down to the Lincoln Memorial the other day, and I see 5-year-olds in groups led by teachers wearing masks outside. There is no science to that. We got Dr. Fauci.
And right there, I got to comment on that. That is absolutely the truth all over the country. Right now, to this day, my daughter has to be muzzled when she goes to school. If there's even a whiff of COVID anywhere around the surrounding area of the school, everybody that's involved, anybody who's even in there by proxy, is automatically barred from coming to the school. The estranged lockdowns you are forced by law to send your child to school, and then you are reliant from that point forward upon their education on that institution. And then they have these tyrannical rules that are completely unstable, and weeks at a time a child will have to spend at home where their parent typically works or whatever. This is not normal. This is not how society is supposed to work. The kids are the most safest age group, as he just stated. I mean, the people that are, the older you get in the sense of your psychology, are typically going to be have stronger mental fortitude. Okay, so the younger, the less strong the fortitude, because you don't have the comprehension of what's actually going on. You can't grasp that. Most people in this country as adults can't even grasp it because of what's happening. Think of the psychological effects that are happening to our children from being muzzled.
Spreading mistruths across the country, saying we've got to forcibly vaccinate the kids. There's no science behind any of that. In fact, England is rejecting what we're doing. In England, because of the age skew...
Yeah, right there. That's another thing. As soon as I seen it trending on Twitter that the Pfizer vaccine was now admitted for the 5 to 11-year-old range, my daughter is in that range. And let me just tell you, she's not at any significant risk of getting hurt or making somebody get hurt from this virus. There is little to no data on kids in the vaccine. There's little to no data, comparably for adults. It's all brand new. It's all very, very fast. Now, I'm not going to deny anything or say anything but subjectively, because this is my opinion on the matter. But my opinion on the matter is there is not enough data for me to make that medical choice for my daughter, and the government should not be allowed to enforce it.
Because of what they're seeing, that the people most at risk are of an older age, they're actually saying, instead of forcibly vaccinating children, why don't we try to make the vaccine doses available for the elderly? Why don't we target our care to those who are at highest risk? We have a problem in our country. We have people who have so politicized science that there are people struggling and dying every day because they've never heard about monoclonal antibodies. We have people dying every day because the government, at the behest of Dr. Fauci and a few other people, have said you can't get monoclonal antibodies if you're in the hospital. I talk to people every day who really have not yet heard of monoclonal antibodies, who get COVID again after being fully vaccinated or sometimes not being vaccinated, and are not.
And that right there is two things: the polarization and the coverage of biased sources and biased data and omitting of information in the mainstream press just further exacerbates the polarization. When you're getting two rabidly different information sources, it's going to exacerbate the polarization in the country, right? And then number two, what he said.
I talk to people every day who really have not yet heard of monoclonal antibodies, who get COVID again after being fully vaccinated or sometimes not being vaccinated, and are not getting the treatment.
So when Joe Rogan was reported on, the media hyper-focused on his use of ivermectin. It was on SNL. I mean, I'm sure I don't even need to tell you. The corporate press parroted it, and then everybody who gets their news and stuff elsewhere was basically mocking the entire thing. It's completely discredited. The entire horse medicine thing is completely discredited, right? But it also kept the attention off of what that man just said, the monoclonal antibodies, which is what Governor DeSantis did from the very start. He's given this to his population for free, as well as if you want to get vaccinated. And now Florida is among the lowest rates per capita. So you got mad polarization, and then you got a very valuable treatment that is being withheld from people.
Emergency room, you're sick and you're coughing. You might be dying from COVID. You get to the emergency room, you don't know what to say. You can barely talk. Your spouse has to be able to tell the doctor, please stop in the emergency room. Give them the monoclonal antibodies before they're admitted, because once they're admitted, we won't treat them. It's the same way with symptoms. You have to have symptoms within the first 10 days. If you don't have symptoms, if you're on day 11, you won't get monoclonal antibodies. It's completely arbitrary, it's capricious, and it has to do with government-mandated guidelines.
And that's it right there. That's the point. This is why you cannot centralize people's health care. For one, the government doesn't have the incentive to want to actually do an efficient job at the entire nation's health care. And two, even if they did say all their intentions were roses and gold, the human is not capable of centralizing an institution that important. Everything the government touches is inefficient and bureaucratic and tends towards dictatorial. As we see, like he said, there's an arbitrary procedure because doctors are scared to treat people on an individual basis. If you've watched my work before, you understand how absolutely insidious this collective idea is. And now we're instituting it by law through the arbitrary edicts of a hybrid fascist government. And this is the result of it. If you stand against the narrative, you are castigated as if you are an evil person spreading misinformation and disinformation. When in all reality, you're being propagandized by your own government, and if you try to speak out, you are censored and slapped down.
Let's take some of the other truths or mistruths that are out there. I've said over and over again, cloth masks don't work, because they don't. Peer-reviewed studies have shown time and time again cloth masks don't work. But when Dr. Fauci tells you all masks work, when he comes in all draped with 3 masks on himself, with little insignias, clever insignias of different sports teams, he's actually spreading a mistruth that causes lives to be lost. Why? Let's say you have a 75-year-old woman, and she gets COVID, and her husband's taking care of her. Do you think the advice to go into the room to feed her, bathe her, help her get in and out of her clothes while she's sick, wearing a cloth mask is a good idea or a bad idea? It's malpractice. And yet, for some reason, the left-wing media has lauded this man as the second coming, and what he's telling you is absolutely verifiably dangerous to your health. The only mask that really works of any real value is the N95 mask. The surgical masks have some value, but not very much.
And think about the tyrannical policies enacted by the own citizenry of the United States. We've seen multiple reports of people getting polarized and angry with each other in public because of this mask situation. And we've been told that if you were a humanitarian and you cared about your neighbors, that not only would you submit to your government and their edicts, but as a sign to your submission, you would wear this mask. You would wear this mask. And here we are. It's been known. Everybody knows that it doesn't do anything. It's literal virtue signaling. If you're on the left, it signifies how decent and humanitarian you are. If you're on the right, it's a object of a white flag. It's a submission. But our federal government walks around, everybody in our government, the entire government, and a good portion of the population walk around as if they're on a moral pedestal. You're the evil one. You must be a right-winger, and you must be a Nazi.
Most of the errors going around the mask, they just aren't of value, but you have to submit. The man's telling you to do it. You got to do what you got to do. But the thing is when you tell people something's safe, they tend to react to that and have behavior, and in their behavior, they're in favor of something that may well actually be risky behavior for them. The vaccinations, because we ignore natural immunity, we directed the vaccine to the wrong people and still are. So, for example, because of Dr. Fauci's lead, India is accepting his lead as well. In India, there's not enough vaccine. They have 1 billion people. They can't vaccinate enough people fast enough. So if you have 1 billion people and you have 200 million doses of vaccine, who do you think you should give it to? Should you give it to the 10-year-old the same as the 85-year-old? No, that's ridiculous. But what about 2 65-year-olds, and one of them's had COVID and one of them hasn't? The studies are plentiful. The studies are throughout that say that if you've already had it, you have natural immunity to COVID, as good or better than the vaccine. Do you think it makes good public health policy to say that everybody that's 65 should get it, instead of saying, have you had it? Why don't we check you for antibodies if you think you've had it? Maybe you should wait until we've vaccinated every 65-year-old that doesn't have immunity. These are real things. These are real discussions.
And that right there is liable to get you banned, because that is completely against the establishment narrative. People are demonized for even talking about natural immunity. At the beginning of this, we were told numbers of 75% for herd immunity before the vaccination got here. It's like everybody has amnesia. Before they started the vaccine program, they were saying that the vaccination and the immunity together needed to be 75%, and then the goalpost just kept shifting. And now today, look at where we're at. We went from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to vaccine passports and mandates. Articles from publications saying that booster may be a misnomer because we really don't know how many shots it's going to take. Yeah, that analogy of the slippery slope when you hand your rights over to the government, people say it's not a thing or it's being used dramatically. That is a very naive, especially for an American, that is so naive to believe that you can just hand your rights over to the government. For one, you are the only person that possesses your rights. The only thing the federal government can do is to oppress those rights. Now, people say that the government can protect them, but historically, that's not what governments do, and that's not what our government is doing now. Their public health policy is not here to help us, and that is the issue. But if we speak out against it, we are censored and stricken down.
But if you have these, unless it's on the Senate floor, actually that's not even true. You can say this on the Senate floor and YouTube will take it down. I've had it happen. I've given speeches on the floor that YouTube takes down. So this is a world in which people need to realize and get back to the ideas of classical liberalism were that we debated things. Classical liberalism was about skepticism. It was about you having your opinion and me having my opinion. But the difference between the elitist or the collectivist point of view and the individual rights point of view is, I believe you have every right to your opinion. But if you're a collectivist and you believe that from the very top down, all medical decisions come from Dr. Fauci, and if he doesn't want you to fly, you don't get to fly, see, it's different from individual liberty.
And that's just it. I have been preaching this. If you go back through my catalog, almost every video has that core theme of what he just said. The main issue in this country is the division and the polarization, but it's not just that. It's the fundamental difference. That's the two camps. It's not right and left. It's not red and blue. It is collectivism and individualism. This country was founded and the machine runs on individualism. Should we rapidly or even slowly shift towards collectivism in any form or fashion, centralizing nodes to the federal government and ceding our rights, the machine will deteriorate and fall apart, as will the citizens. And as for the censorship, that's just... people are acting like as if this is normal. This is not. This is the most un-American time. Maybe I'm hyperpolarized myself. I have my biases, and I posit them as such. But nobody can deny that the founding documents of this country were so radical because they preached individual rights that were sovereign to the individual. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't give them to the federal government because they don't belong to them. They belong to you. Now, you may submit to your tyrannical government, and willingly so, but that does not make your rights any less more your rights. They are yours inherently. They come from God.
Because I think if you have a differing opinion, you're welcome to your opinion. And if an
Absolutely.
airline has a policy I don't like, maybe I'd choose not to fly. But the idea that we're going to restrict everyone's behavior based on what they decide to do, what's next? People eat too many cheeseburgers, we're not going to give them a heart stent because we think they haven't behaved and they haven't listened to the doctors on what they should be eating.
Facts.
There is no end to this.
Nope.
But in the end, if we're not careful, we are going to spend this country into oblivion. COVID's a big cause of the extra spending we have now. But I can tell you,
and they
there
love
are
it.
Ramifications. They're coming quick. They're coming in the form of higher prices. But there is no reason in the world for us to default. We have plenty of money. We should simply pay for the interest based on what comes in every month.
And what he just said is of dire importance, because while economics may be fairly boring to your average person, it is absolutely vital to the system of exchange, human action, praxeology. Humans act and we exchange with each other, and this is how society is built. But if you disrupt the medium exchange, it just has very insidious effects on the population itself. I'm not going to preach the economics of it, but it is very important. And like he said, a large portion of the expenditures now is towards COVID. Well, because we absolutely have to, right? No, all that's doing is forcing more centralization of not only our rights, but our economy. And just every last bit of our sovereignty is being gobbled up by the federal government. And should you speak out, we have a hyper-fascist cooperation between federal government and big tech. And should you even begin to talk against the government, you are quickly silenced. I hope you've been paying attention. This what he said is a warning to everybody. We're talking about a U.S. senator on the floor giving a speech has been censored multiple times. The propaganda machine of the United States federal government is allied with the private sector. And it has successfully indoctrinated multiple generations to slowly and insidiously plant a mind virus. And at the fundamental core of that virus that leeches on the host is collectivism. You slowly submit your rights to your centralized node of government. For the betterment of the collective, of course. People are constantly saying, we have to do this for the greater good. Well, I would beg to argue that freedom and liberty are the greater good. Individual sovereignty is the greater good, and we must protect it at all costs. I'll stop with that. By all means, social medias are all down below. Join all the community that you can. Help me build this brand. Like, share, subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one.